Hi, I'm Rick.
Hi, I'm Gilliam.
Gilliam, you prepared something about Angular Schematics, and then I think we'll even do 3 different videos on Angular Schematics, right?
Correct. I have prepared an introduction, how to get you started with Angular Schematics, because I have found it quite difficult, because some schematics are like this really abstract thing. Where do you start with generating files or something?
Yeah, and it's kind of impressive, right? The first time you look at it, you think, okay, so how am I going to tame this beast?
Yeah, correct. It's especially abstract syntax tree, that's what's under the hood. And that's complex stuff that has a big learning curve. And Angular Schematics development team have found a really nice way to abstract and get you really to play with this tree in a more friendly manner.
Okay, so part 1 is an introduction to schematics?
Correct.
And then part 2?
Part 2, I'm going to focus on optimizing workflow, because it's all about time saving and eliminating those repetitive tasks, those tedious tasks you don't want to do.
Okay.
And schematics can be really helpful.
Okay. And the third one?
The third one is how to, in my opinion, create a successful Angular library. Because when you combine an Angular library with schematics, you can talk about a system. And the system will benefit your consumers to be also time saving,
more productive.
But
But also to keep you closer to standards that you might have developed, right?
Yes, so that's a big part.
If you want to know everything and anything about schematics, watch all 3 of these videos. But let's start with the introduction.
Yes. First of all, we're talking about schematics. The principle about Angular Schematics is a bunch of rules. And these rules are like these methods. Basically, you have a function, a existing file system. So you got a project with some folders or some files, and you want to mutate this system, this project, to another state.
Yeah.
And essentially, a schematic is a function that is receiving a tree, sometimes called a host, and it's gonna return another tree, the result.
Okay.
So I've on my screen prepared a sandbox application. And this sandbox application I have done for 2 reasons: the sandbox to demo and to get you started with schematics. First of all, I would like to say, and that's what I have, is when you develop Angular applications, you will already use schematics most likely. If you are developing in the latest Angular versions, you should be familiar with the Angular CLI, the command line interface.
So you do ng-new or...
Yeah, correct. You're already starting with the schematic. ng-new is just a schematic called new.
Yeah.
And so when we're taking a look at the Angular schematic CLI, under the hood there will be a GitHub available schematics-Angular called, and they will have the source code of generating components, services, modules, lazy loading, how they manipulate files or adding files. So schematics are, you can see them as the building blocks of the Angular CLI. The other thing I mentioned is the schematics Angular for the die-hard developer that's wanna learn by code. Well, it's open source, so dive into the GitHub, open some of these folders and get crazy.
And I think even if you have the Angular modules installed locally in your node modules, you can even traverse the tree and go to the schematics that they use, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And that brings me to another CLI, and that's called the Angular DevKit Schematics CLI. And this one you want to install globally to get you started, just similar to the normal CLI. You get two choices. You get a schematic keyword to use this CLI. You get a schematic called schematic, so a schematic for schematics. And you have a schematic called blank. Blank is just a plain schematic project, and if you use the schematic, you're gonna. I have so much fun in using schematic, but you're gonna have some example application. So I'm gonna execute this schematic hello world code because I have already installed this DevKit. So I'm not gonna do this, and it's gonna scaffold.
Yeah, so we see a lot of stuff happening now. So it's already also installing NPM packages that it needs to have that application up and running on your local machine.
Correct.
So could we kind of say that it looks a little bit like a NuGet package that we know in .NET, where it actually does all types of preparations for you to be able to use the package? Only here the package is an entire application, or maybe even changing your application to be in a certain way or adding certain files.
In a way,
it's
yes.
a project template and a NuGet package combined, probably.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's a close description of it. Well, you can give your schematic tasks, and one of those tasks is installing packages.
Okay.
And the way NPM, I've used NPM, you got this node modules and it will install locally. That's the bit of the pitfall of NPM demos. It will always install locally, so it's gonna take time. So I'm trying to avoid those NPM installs for you guys, but forgive me for for some of those I have to show. In a Angular project, Angular schematic project, there is a specific keyword in the package JSON that's quite important, and that's this keyword called schematics, and it's pointing to a collection JSON, and that's what a schematic project is. It's a collection of functions that are responsible for manipulating a file system. And this collection JSON, well, the developers of this example have broken the rules to...
JSON doesn't know comments, right? Officially.
Officially, yeah, indeed. So, but you should live a bit dangerous. But these comments are very helpful. They will explain a lot about what the possibilities of this schema format are. This collection schema, this is like the syntax that the Angular CLI is gonna know and it's gonna use when it's running these schematics. You get 3 simple, tiny schematics for your as an example. You got a my schematic, and it has you could have a description just so your consumer knows what it's gonna do. And a factory, and this factory is that function I've mentioned before. So and
then if I'm not mistaken, it always does everything in memory first before it actually persists to disk, right?
Correct.
Just to make sure it doesn't break anything before it finishes.
Correct. And that's one of the ways the Angular team have designed schematics is indeed run it in memory, and because it's very frustrating to have 99% of your code will execute fine, and I've made a silly mistake on the last part and it will break, and I'm left with a bad state.
Yeah, that's scrappy.
Yeah.
So they fixed that. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. And the most simple schematic, this is my schematic, this is this function called a rule, and a rule can execute an action to this tree. So this is the tree. This is a abstraction on this abstract syntax tree. So it's basically how a computer is looking at your files and code. Because when you look at a code file, it's gonna be understandable for a human. and I'm a human, so when I'm reading a class, I will see a Pascal cased class, a closing brackets, opening brackets, a function with logical names, but a computer does not care about those logical names.
No.
So that's the hard part, to really get into this abstract tree, but this tree interface of Angular have made 4 quite easy methods to do stuff for you, and that's create, delete, update, and another one I cannot remember anymore. And you don't have to fiddle with this abstract tree.
That's nice.
So
it's a good abstraction that they added.
yeah. So this example is going to create, and the way it works, it's going to create a new file called hello with a content world. So it's not a file with an extension, it's just a file hello.
It's a hello file.
And that's the resulting tree, and that's what is returned by this rule. So we're gonna run this my schematic just to try it out.
Yep.
We have built it, so let's try it. You got this schematic keyword, and the name of your schematic in your collection is quite important. You can recognize this name by this key, my-schematic. It's a relative path, and the name will be after the column. And this relative path will be replaced later with your name of your package if it's published.
Yeah. So now we should have a file hello somewhere.
Well, that's the thing, you have mentioned it before. This is something called a dry run, because when we're using the schematic CLI, we are talking about a debug mode.
Okay, because by default, for instance, Angular CLI by default runs it, let's say in production, and you need to explicitly say, I want to do a dry run, and then it doesn't persist the changes, but this works the other way around since you're in debug mode now.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Correct. So I have to explicitly say dry run flag is false. And now
there you can see the file popping up.
We have said hello to the world.
So this means that we could auto-generate services each time anybody wants a service. We can have the basic structure of the service ready in a schematic, and then an Angular developer just says, give me a new service of our specific type, and you'll get all the boilerplate code out of the box.
Yes, yes.
That's pretty powerful for productivity as far as front-end development goes.
Yeah, it's all about saving time when scaffolding folders. When we have a RESTful API, you could think, I want to generate these RESTful services.
Yep.
You have some code architecture. You can say, I want to make sure this architecture is implemented in the same way.
Yep.
So when I replace this hello file with some folders, with some modules, some services, then I can really talk about making sure, or at least enforce my architecture through all the applications I am building with with the teams where I'm at. That's a beautiful thing about it. But you can also think about dependencies. Let's say you have a date dependency, moment.js, date functions. You can install it out of the box.
Yeah.
It's all, and that's quite saving time. So it's money.
Yeah, except for the fact that you still need to npm install all of those packages. But let's not go there again.
This makes up for it a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and this is I've shown my schematic, the simplest example. We have another example, the my other schematic. This is a great example to show you the chainability, the reusability of your schematics. You can really run these rules in a chain, so a linear order. You have to really make sure to be compliant to this order, because some files are gonna exist or not exist in this virtual representation of this tree. So your schematic's gonna break.
Yeah.
If you are not careful about this. And another beautiful thing, because it's just a function, we can unit test. And the Angular dev team gives you a schematic test runner. So they have this test context.
Yeah.
And because they have a test context, they give you a more fun tree to test with, because you have a files array, and this array is just an array of strings with the relative parts of the file. So it's quite easy to assert your created files.
That's actually pretty cool. And then, I mean, they've been working with schematics for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that these are recent additions, so that it now is becoming more and more of an, let's say, production-ready service, or has it been like this for quite some time already?
It has been like this for quite some time, but the main problem I have experienced about it is documentation and good examples.
Okay.
One thing I like to do with schematics is read the documentation on the Angular website. You're gonna learn just the basics, just getting you started, getting you ready to this level, and maybe generate this surface. But the cool stuff, the really complex schematics, I have learned to just dive into those GitHub open source code.
Yeah, so the documentation on those isn't up to par yet?
No. The documentation is great to get you started, but not...
After that, you're on your own. No.
Yeah, well...
No, but then there's example GitHubs where you can actually go to.
Yeah.
And then is this also in a public repo?
This code, yes.
Okay, we'll add a link to the description. Cool.
It will be on my GitHub available, so you can fork this example. And think Clarity, material design, Bootstrap, ng Bootstrap, Angular CDK, all those libraries use schematics. NGRX Store, another one, they use schematics. When you're doing ng-add, you can think ng-add is a schematic.
Yep.
Oh, let's dive into the GitHub. What have they done? Just take a look, learn, and you're gonna learn how they have solved issues.
Okay, cool.
And the final is the step to the scaffolding, the more complex one. Is another chain, repeating pattern for rules, but also using a template files. So you got this folder files, and this is a use case to add files to your project. And you have a funny syntax, because you have here test __ index __. So index should be a variable for this template engine, and there will be one. And this is kind of back to Razor.
Yeah, kind of looks like it.
So you're gonna open and tell the template engine where it needs to be. Index should be a variable, so it's gonna generate. So getting started with schematics is quite easy, and getting good or experienced with schematics is gonna take effort to read the GitHub code.
And to watch our next 2 episodes, because this was only the introduction. Look at the next 2 episodes to make sure you know everything you need to know about Angular schematics, right?
Yes, correct.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
See you next.
Bye.